I'm Nathan, 32 years old, and I sat stunned as Mr. Blackwell, our family attorney, informed me that despite caring for my parents for over a decade, I'd inherited nothing but photo albums and fishing tackle. Meanwhile, my brother Ryan, who'd barely visited in years, received their house investments and all financial accounts. For 12 years, I'd paid their mortgage, utilities, and medical expenses through automatic transfers from my accounts. When Ryan texted mortgage due from Mom's phone a month after I canceled everything, my two-word reply changed everything. Not mine. Before I share how this unfolded, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and join me for a story about family betrayal and the power of finally standing up for yourself. Growing up in Millfield, a small suburban town outside Chicago, I was always the responsible one. Even as a kid, I was the brother who saved his allowance while Ryan spent his before he got home. I was the one who remembered our parents' birthdays and anniversaries. I was the one who helped Mom with groceries and Dad with yard work. It wasn't that I was trying to be the perfect son, it just came naturally to me to be dependable. Our parents, George and Martha Davidson, were hard-working middle-class people. Dad was a high school history teacher, and Mom worked as a nurse at the local hospital. They weren't wealthy by any means, but they provided a stable home and emphasized the values of education, hard work, and family loyalty. The contrast between Ryan and me was apparent from an early age. 3 years older than me, Ryan was charming and outgoing, but chronically irresponsible. He'd forget chores, miss curfews, and talk his way out of consequences with a smile and a promise to do better next time. While I was in the backyard helping Dad fix the deck, Ryan would be out with friends. While I was at the kitchen table helping Mom organize medical bills, Ryan would be upstairs playing video games. Despite this, our parents loved us both. They were fair people who tried not to play favorites, though they relied on me more and more as the years passed. I never resented this. I loved them and wanted to help. Looking back, perhaps I should have noticed how they sometimes took my reliability for granted while celebrating Ryan's smallest efforts. After high school, our paths diverged even further. Ryan went to a state college 6 hours away and rarely came home, even during breaks. I attended the local university living at home to save money and help out around the house. When Ryan graduated with a business degree and moved to California to pursue real estate, our parents were proud but disappointed by the distance. When I completed my accounting degree and got a job at a respected firm 15 minutes from their house, they seemed relieved. By the time I was 24, I had established myself professionally and moved into a small apartment nearby. I visited my parents at least twice a week, helping Dad with home repairs and taking Mom to her medical appointments after she developed arthritis. Ryan called on major holidays and visited maybe once a year, always, with stories about his glamorous life in Los Angeles, the celebrities whose homes he showed, the parties he attended, the money he was supposedly making. Around this time, Dad confided in me that they were struggling financially. The recession had hit their retirement savings hard, and Mom's medical bills were piling up, despite insurance. Without hesitation, I set up automatic transfers to cover their mortgage and utilities. It wasn't a huge strain on my finances. I lived modestly and was good at budgeting. I considered it an investment in my parents' well-being and peace of mind. "Son, we can't accept this," Dad had protested when I showed him the first transfer confirmation. "It's not a gift, Dad. Consider it a loan if that makes you feel better." I assured him, though, we both knew I didn't expect repayment, or think of it as rent, for all those years I lived with you during college. That made him laugh, and the matter was settled. Every month, $1,200 transferred automatically from my account to theirs, $800 for the mortgage, $400 for utilities and property taxes. Over the years, I also covered unexpected expenses, a new roof, a water heater replacement, Mom's increasing medical costs. Meanwhile, Ryan's calls grew even less frequent. When Mom had surgery in 2017, he sent flowers, but couldn't get away from work to visit. When Dad turned 65, Ryan promised to come but canceled at the last minute due to a big listing opportunity. Our parents made excuses for him, saying how busy and important his career was. I nodded and changed the subject, not wanting to cause them pain, by pointing out the obvious disparity in our involvement. My girlfriend Rachel, whom I'd been dating for 3 years, witnessed all of this. A kindergarten teacher with a kind heart, she initially encouraged me to give Ryan the benefit of the doubt. But even she grew frustrated with his absences and empty promises. "Your parents deserve better from him," she said, after Ryan missed another Christmas. "And so do you. You shouldn't have to carry everything yourself." "It's okay," I assured her. "I don't mind helping them. They'd do the same for me." Rachel gave me a look I couldn't quite interpret. "I hope they appreciate everything you do." That comment stuck with me, raising questions I'd been suppressing. Did they appreciate my sacrifices? Did they notice how Ryan's absence affected me? There were moments that made me wonder, like when Mom displayed Ryan's hastily chosen birthday gift prominently, but tucked the carefully selected book I'd given her in a drawer. Or when Dad excitedly shared Ryan's exaggerated stories about celebrity clients, but seemed only politely interested in my promotion. Still, I pushed these doubts aside. My parents weren't perfect, but they were good people who had given me a loving childhood. If they sometimes seemed to favor Ryan's distant glamour over my steady presence, well, that was human nature. The exotic often seems more appealing than the familiar. By my 30th birthday, I had paid over $45,000 toward their mortgage, not counting utilities and other expenses. I never kept a detailed accounting. They were my parents, not a balance sheet. I assumed that someday when they were gone, these contributions would be recognized. Not that I was helping them to gain an inheritance, but I did believe in fairness. Rachel and I had begun discussing marriage, looking at houses in the area. I wanted to stay close to my parents as they aged, knowing they would need more help, not less. Ryan, now in his mid-30s, had married and divorced, continuing his fast-paced life in California, with occasional phone calls home that grew shorter and less frequent. If anyone had asked me then, what would happen when my parents passed away, I would have said the house would probably go to me, since I'd been paying the mortgage for years, while Ryan might receive other assets to balance things out. It seemed the only fair arrangement, given our respective contributions to our parents' lives. How wrong I was. How completely devastatingly wrong. The phone call came on a rainy Tuesday evening in October. Rachel and I were making dinner in my apartment discussing weekend plans when my phone rang with the local hospital's number. "Mr. Davidson. This is Mercy General Hospital. I'm afraid there's been an accident involving your parents." The next hours passed in a blur of hospital corridors, forms to sign, and devastating news. My parents had been driving home from their anniversary dinner when a drunk driver crossed the median and hit them head-on. Dad died at the scene. Mom survived the initial impact but suffered catastrophic injuries. She passed away during surgery. In an instant, both my parents were gone. I called Ryan immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. He answered on the fourth ring, music and laughter in the background. "They're gone, Ryan," I managed to say. "Mom and Dad. Car accident. They're both gone." The background noise faded as he presumably moved to a quieter location. What number? That can't be right. "I'm at the hospital now. It happened 2 hours ago." His breathing changed, and I heard what sounded like a stifled sob. Despite our differences, Ryan loved our parents in his way. "I'll get the first flight out tomorrow," he said finally. I handled everything in the numb, mechanical way grief sometimes allows. Rachel stayed by my side as I identified bodies, arranged for transport to the funeral home, and began the endless administrative tasks that follow unexpected deaths. I contacted relatives, chose caskets, selected burial plots next to our grandparents, and wrote the obituary. I picked out Dad's favorite suit and Mom's cherished blue dress for them to be buried in. Ryan arrived 2 days later, red-eyed but composed. He hugged me briefly at the airport, a gesture that felt more obligatory than comforting. "Thanks for handling everything," he said, as we drove to my apartment where he'd be staying. I wouldn't have known where to start. "You get used to handling things when you're here," I replied, instantly regretting the edge in my voice. This wasn't the time for resentment. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday, giving distant relatives time to arrange travel. Ryan spent most of that week making phone calls in private and taking long drives alone, processing his grief in his own way. I continued managing arrangements, finding strange comfort in the tasks that kept my mind occupied. On Thursday, I returned from the florist to find Ryan walking through our parents' house, opening closets and examining furniture. "What are you doing?" I asked. setting down the sample flower arrangements I'd brought to show him. "Just looking around," he said vaguely. "Lot of memories in this place." Yeah, I agreed, thinking of the thousands of dinners, holidays, and ordinary evenings we'd spent in this house. The home our parents had purchased 30 years ago, where they'd raised us, and where I'd been helping them stay for the past decade. Ryan ran his hand along the dining room table. Solid cherry. "This must be worth something. And Mom's jewelry, is it? In their bedroom?" His focus on the monetary value of our parents' possessions jarred me. "We don't need to think about that right now." Just being practical, he shrugged. "Lots to sort out after the funeral." Later that day, our Aunt Margaret arrived from Michigan. She'd always been close to Mom, her younger sister, and her grief was palpable. As I helped her settle into the guest room, she squeezed my hand. "Your mother was so proud of you, Nathan, the way you've taken care of them all these years." I nodded, throat tight. "Did she ever talk to you about arrangements?" Margaret asked carefully. "Arrangements? For after they were gone? The will? The house, all that?" "Not really. I assumed everything was straightforward." I hesitated. "Why?" Margaret looked troubled. "No reason. Ryan mentioned some things when he called me about the funeral. I was surprised. That's all." Before I could press for details, Ryan appeared in the doorway, effectively ending our conversation. The day of the funeral dawned clear and crisp. Over 100 people filled the small church, colleagues from Dad's school, Mom's friends from the hospital, neighbors, and relatives from both sides of the family. I delivered the eulogy, my voice steady until the final lines, when I thanked my parents for their love and guidance. Rachel's hand on my back gave me strength to finish. Ryan spoke briefly, sharing anecdotes from our childhood that painted a picture of involved, loving parents. Listening to him, someone who didn't know our family might think he'd been an equally devoted son. I pushed away the uncharitable thought. We all process grief differently. After the burial and reception, I returned to my apartment exhausted. Rachel suggested I take a sleeping pill, but I couldn't quiet my mind. Something about Ryan's behavior bothered me, his sudden interest in our parents' possessions. His private conversations. The confident way he'd discuss sorting things out with relatives at the reception. The next morning my phone rang. It was Mr. Blackwell, our parents' attorney, a man I'd met only once years ago, when I'd driven Mom to his office to update her will after her sister died. "I'm very sorry for your loss, Nathan," he said formally. "When you and your brother are ready, we should schedule a meeting to review your parents' will and estate matters." "Of course," I replied. "Ryan's flying back to California on Tuesday. Could we do it before then?" "Certainly. Monday at 10 would work for me." I texted Ryan about the appointment, and he responded immediately with a thumbs-up emoji. His quick agreement added to my growing unease. That night our neighbor Jack came by with a casserole. He'd lived next door to our parents for 20 years, and had often helped me with two-person repair jobs around their house. "Your dad was so grateful for everything you did for them," Jack said, as he handed me the food. "He told me just last month how he didn't know what they'd do without you." I nodded, appreciating the sentiment, but wondering why this conversation felt important. "Ryan's been around a lot these past few months, though," Jack continued. "Surprised me given how little we've seen him over the years." I set down the casserole. "Ryan's been here recently." Jack looked confused. "Yeah, 4 or 5 times since summer. Thought you knew. He'd stay for a day or two, then head out again. Your mom seemed real pleased about it." This was the first I'd heard of these visits. Ryan hadn't mentioned reconnecting with our parents, and neither had they. What else didn't I know? Monday morning arrived with a knot of dread in my stomach. Rachel offered to come with me for support, an offer I gratefully accepted. Ryan met us in the parking lot of the attorney's office, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He nodded at Rachel but said little as we entered the building. Mr. Blackwell welcomed us into a conference room with the appropriate somber expression of a man who regularly deals with grieving families. He arranged papers before him, adjusted his glasses, and began the process that would shatter my understanding of my place in my parents' lives. The conference room in Mr. Blackwell's office felt too warm and too cold simultaneously. Rachel sat beside me, her hand resting supportively on my arm. Ryan sat across the table, inexplicably confident, checking his watch as if he had more important places to be. Mr. Blackwell cleared his throat and began with legal formalities. We are here to review the last will and testament of George William Davidson and Martha Ellen Davidson, dated August 15th of this year. August 15th, just 2 months ago. A chill ran through me as I realized their will had been updated recently. I hadn't known about any changes. I'll summarize the main provisions before we review specific details. Mr. Blackwell continued adjusting his reading glasses. The will is relatively straightforward. After funeral expenses and outstanding debts, the entirety of George and Martha Davidson's estate is bequeathed to their son, Ryan George Davidson. The words didn't register immediately. I waited for him to continue to explain my portion, but he simply looked at me expectantly. "I'm sorry," I said, leaning forward. "Could you clarify? What exactly does Ryan inherit?" Mr. Blackwell glanced down at the document. "Everything, Mr. Davidson. The house at 247 Maple Street, all bank accounts and investments, life insurance policies, vehicles, and personal property, with the exceptions I'll note momentarily." My mind raced to make sense of this information. And what do I inherit? Ryan shifted uncomfortably for the first time since we'd arrived. To Nathan James Davidson, Mr. Blackwell read directly from the will we leave the family photo albums, fishing equipment, and personal mementos listed in Appendix A. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. On it was a brief list. Photo albums in hall closet, fishing gear in garage, Nathan's childhood memorabilia in attic boxes, father's pocket watch. That was it. After 12 years of financial and practical support, after thousands of hours spent ensuring their comfort and security, I had been left memorabilia while Ryan received assets worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. There must be some mistake, I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. I've been paying their mortgage for the past 12 years. The house is legally titled solely to your parents, Mr. Blackwell interrupted gently. Your financial contributions, while generous, did not establish ownership. Rachel's grip on my arm tightened. "This can't be right," she said. "Nathan has bank records showing years of payments." Mr. Blackwell nodded sympathetically. Financial support to parents is generally considered a gift unless documented otherwise. Was there a formal loan agreement or contract regarding these payments? No, I admitted. They were my parents. I didn't think we needed paperwork. I understand this is difficult, the attorney said. However, the will is quite clear and legally executed. Your parents were of sound mind when they signed it with 2 independent witnesses present. I turned to Ryan, who had remained suspiciously quiet. Did you know about this? He couldn't quite meet my eyes. They mentioned making some changes to their will. I didn't know the specifics. The lie was so obvious it almost took my breath away. Ryan's lack of surprise, his business attire, his confidence throughout the process, he had known exactly what was coming. When did they make these changes? I asked Mr. Blackwell. And why? I can confirm the date was August 15th, but I cannot disclose the private conversations I had with your parents about their decisions. Attorney-client privilege remains in effect even after death. Rachel, always perceptive, asked the question forming in my mind. Were both George and Martha present when these changes were made? A flicker of something discomfort crossed Mr. Blackwell's face. Mr. Davidson brought in the revised will, already prepared. Mrs. Davidson was present for the signing. Dad had prepared the will elsewhere, not with their longtime attorney. That struck me as odd, but before I could pursue that line of questioning, Ryan stood up. I know this is a shock, Nathan. We can talk about it later. Right now, I need to get some paperwork from Mr. Blackwell about transferring utilities and bank accounts. His dismissive tone snapped something inside me. You've been visiting them secretly, planning this. Ryan's expression hardened. Not secretly. They didn't tell you because they knew how you'd react. Always the martyr, always keeping score of everything you do for people. Ryan, Mr. Blackwell, interjected perhaps this conversation would be better, continued privately. I stood, papers clutched in my hand. We're done here anyway. You've made it very clear where I stand. As Rachel and I turned to leave, Mr. Blackwell called after me. Nathan, regardless of the circumstances, I am truly sorry for your loss. I didn't respond. The platitude felt hollow in the face of this secondary loss, the destruction of my understanding of my relationship with my parents. Had they really seen me as Ryan, portrayed as someone who kept score? Had my support meant nothing to them in the end? In the parking lot, Ryan caught up to us. "Look, I know you're upset." "Upset?" I laughed humorlessly. "I'm not upset, Ryan. I'm seeing clearly for the first time. Whatever you said to them, however you manipulated this situation, you've shown exactly who you are." "It's not manipulation to reconnect with your parents," he shot back. "Maybe if you hadn't been so busy playing the perfect son, counting every dollar you gave them, you'd understand that they wanted more than a financial caretaker." Rachel stepped between us. "That's enough. Nathan has been nothing but devoted to your parents while you've been absent for years. Whatever happened in those last few months doesn't erase that truth." Ryan's facade cracked slightly. "I'm not the villain here. They made their own decisions." "With your guidance, I'm sure," I replied coldly. "Enjoy the house I've been paying for. I hope it was worth selling your integrity." We got into our car and drove away, leaving Ryan standing in the parking lot. The weight of betrayal pressed on my chest, making it difficult to breathe. Not just betrayal from Ryan that I could have expected, but from my parents, the people I had structured my entire adult life around supporting. "Nathan," Rachel said softly as we drove. "I'm so sorry. This is unbelievable." I couldn't respond. The world I thought I understood had collapsed around me, replaced by a reality where 12 years of sacrifice could be dismissed with a signature on a legal document. When we reached my apartment, I finally broke down. All the grief I had been managing while handling funeral arrangements, all the shock from the will, reading all the confusion about my parents' decision, it overwhelmed me at once. Rachel held me as I sobbed, not offering platitudes, just steady presence. "What did I do wrong?" I asked when I could finally speak. "Was I just a checkbook to them all these years?" "You did nothing wrong," Rachel said firmly. "I don't know why they made this decision, but it doesn't erase who you are or what you did for them. That came from love, and nothing can take that away." Her words helped, but the questions remained. Why had my parents left everything to Ryan? What had happened during those secret visits? And most urgently, what was I going to do now? The day after the will reading, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face columns of numbers and client meetings while my life was in disarray. Rachel had to teach her kindergarten class, so I was alone with my thoughts. A dangerous state given the circumstances. Once the initial shock subsided, my analytical nature took over. I needed information, understanding, some explanation for what had happened. I opened my laptop and began methodically reviewing years of financial records. The automatic transfers to my parents' account were easy to track, $1,200 on the 5th of every month for the past 12 years. But there were countless other expenses as well. The $8,000 roof replacement in 2015, the water heater, the property taxes I'd covered when they were short, Mom's specialized arthritis medications not fully covered by insurance. By midday, I had documented over $75,000 in direct financial support, not counting the time, labor, and emotional support I'd provided. The total stunned me. It wasn't that I regretted helping them, they were my parents, and I'd loved them deeply. But seeing the figure laid out so starkly highlighted the magnitude of their decision to leave me nothing. Around 2 o'clock, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Wilson, our parents' next-door neighbor, and Mom's close friend for 20 years. I almost didn't answer, not feeling ready for condolences, but something compelled me to pick up. "Nathan, dear, how are you holding up?" Her voice was warm, with genuine concern. "I'm managing, Mrs. Wilson. Thank you for checking in. I've been thinking about you constantly, especially after speaking with Ryan yesterday." My attention sharpened. "You spoke with Ryan?" "He came by to tell me about the will reading." "Nathan, I'm so sorry. It's not what Martha would have wanted, not the Martha I knew for most of my life." I sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" There was a pause before she continued. "I should have called you sooner. I've been debating whether to get involved, but I can't stay silent knowing what I know. Please, Mrs. Wilson, I'm trying to make sense of all this." She sighed heavily. Ryan started visiting in June, out of the blue, after barely showing his face for years. He was charming, attentive, bringing expensive gifts, taking them to fancy restaurants. Your father was so pleased to have his attention after all this time. This aligned with what Jack had mentioned. Did they say why he suddenly reappeared? He told them he'd had some kind of epiphany after his divorce, realized what was truly important in life. Your mother was skeptical at first, but your father was completely won over. And the will. Did they mention changing it? Another pause. Not directly. But in July, Ryan brought a friend to dinner. A lawyer from his firm in California. Martha mentioned it because she thought it odd that he'd bring a business associate to a family dinner. A lawyer. Not Mr. Blackwell, their trusted family attorney, but someone connected to Ryan. The next thing I knew, your father was talking about making provisions for Ryan's future, saying how real estate was such an unstable business, especially in California, with the market fluctuations. The pieces were starting to fit together, creating a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. Did my mother agree with these changes? Mrs. Wilson's voice dropped. Martha and I had tea the week before the accident. She seemed troubled. Said George had made some decisions she wasn't entirely comfortable with, but she didn't want to cause conflict. You know how she hated confrontation. Yes, I knew. Mom had always been the peacekeeper, smoothing over disagreements, avoiding difficult conversations. It was why she'd never confronted Ryan about his absences, why she'd made excuses for him all these years. Nathan, there's something else. The day they signed the new will, I saw them leaving with Ryan. Your mother looked upset. When I asked later if everything was okay, she changed the subject. It wasn't like her. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. Thank you for telling me this, Mrs. Wilson. It helps to understand what might have happened. Your parents loved you, Nathan. Never doubt that. Whatever influenced their final decisions doesn't change the years of love they had for you. After we hung up, I sat motionless, processing this new information. Ryan hadn't simply benefited from a surprise decision, he had orchestrated it. Brought in his own lawyer, pressured our father when he was vulnerable, missing his distant son. And our mother had gone along with it, perhaps reluctantly, to keep the peace. I called Rachel during her lunch break and shared what I'd learned. That's manipulation, Nathan. It sounds like Ryan took advantage of their vulnerability and your father's desire to reconnect with him. I'm going to talk to another attorney, I decided. See if there's grounds to contest the will. I think that's wise, she agreed. Do you want me to come over after school? Please, I said suddenly, not wanting to be alone with the weight of this betrayal. That afternoon, I contacted 3 attorneys who specialized in estate litigation. The earliest appointment I could get was for Thursday, 2 days away. In the meantime, I continued my investigation, calling relatives who had been in touch with my parents in recent months. My cousin Sarah confirmed that Ryan had been love-bombing our parents all summer. He was calling them every few days, sending gifts. It was weird given how absent he'd been, but Uncle George was over the moon about it. Uncle Frank was more blunt. Your brother's a manipulative son of a gun, always has been. He saw dollar signs when your parents had that accident last year. He was referring to a minor fender bender that had shaken my parents, making them confront their mortality. I had helped them update their emergency contacts and insurance beneficiaries afterward. Had that planted the seed in Ryan's mind? By the time Rachel arrived that evening, I had a clearer picture of what had happened. Ryan, facing financial difficulties after his divorce, had systematically worked to ingratiate himself with our parents and influence their estate planning. He had brought in his own lawyer friend, rather than using Mr. Blackwell, who might have questioned such a dramatic change. He had pressured our father, knowing he was the decision-maker in financial matters, and our mother had acquiesced to keep peace in her final months. So what will you do? Rachel asked after I explained my findings. I have the attorney appointment Thursday. But honestly, even if there's a legal case, do I want to spend years in litigation, fighting over possessions, when my parents are gone? Rachel considered this. It's not just about the possessions, though, is it? It's about justice. About not letting Ryan get away with manipulating your parents. Yes, I acknowledged. But it's also about moving forward, about not letting this betrayal define the rest of my life. As we talked into the night, another aspect of the situation became clear, one I hadn't fully processed until now. I was still making all those automatic payments. The mortgage, utilities, property taxes, insurance, all still drawing from my accounts, now effectively paying for Ryan's inheritance. That needs to stop immediately, Rachel said firmly. Why should you keep paying for a house that he now owns? She was right. Whatever I decided about contesting the will, one thing was certain: I would no longer financially support the assets Ryan had manipulated his way into owning. The next morning, I made an appointment with my financial advisor for that afternoon. It was time to reclaim my financial future from people who hadn't valued my contributions. Marcus Bell had been my financial advisor since I started my career. He knew my financial history intimately, including the support I'd provided to my parents. When I explained the situation, his professional composure briefly gave way to genuine shock. They left everything to your brother. After all you've contributed. Every last penny, I confirmed, handing him the summary of my payments I'd compiled. And I'm still making these payments automatically every month. Marcus reviewed the document, his frown deepening. Nathan, these payments total nearly $4,800 monthly when you factor in the recurring and occasional expenses. That's a significant portion of your income. I know. It was manageable when I thought. I trailed off, not wanting to admit I'd expected some recognition in their will. When I thought I was helping my parents, now I'm essentially funding Ryan's inheritance. Let's address this systematically, Marcus said, shifting into professional mode. I recommend immediately canceling all automatic payments related to the house and other assets now owned by your brother. He pulled up my accounts on his computer. You have automatic transfers for the mortgage, utilities, property taxes, and home insurance, plus recurring payments to the lawn service and housekeeping service you arranged for them. Seeing it all laid out was sobering. I had integrated my parents' expenses so completely into my financial life that I hadn't fully recognized the extent of my support. Cancel all of it, I said decisively. Every last payment. Marcus nodded. We'll need to contact each service provider and financial institution. Some may require written confirmation. I suggest we do this methodically to ensure nothing falls through the cracks. For the next 2 hours, we worked through each payment. I called the mortgage company to cancel the automatic payment, explaining that the property had changed ownership. I contacted the utility companies to remove my bank account from their automatic payment systems. I called the lawn service and housekeeping service to cancel the contracts entirely. With each cancellation, I felt a mixture of emotions: guilt at the thought of services suddenly stopping, relief at reclaiming my finances, and underlying anger that these decisions were necessary at all. What about your parents' life insurance? Marcus asked. Were you a beneficiary on any policies? I assumed I was on at least one of them, I said, but given everything else, probably not anymore. We should check. If Ryan had them change beneficiaries too, that would strengthen a case for undue influence. He made a note to follow up on this point. Then he turned to the positive side of these changes. Now let's talk about what this means for your financial future. You're reclaiming nearly $60,000 annually. That creates significant opportunities. For the first time since the will reading, I felt a glimmer of hope. That was a substantial sum of money that could go toward a house with Rachel, toward our future children's education, toward retirement savings, or even toward the small accounting practice I dreamed of starting someday. I'd like to set up a consultation next week to revise your financial plan, Marcus suggested. But for now, I think we should establish a temporary allocation to help you process this transition. We created a simple breakdown: 40% to savings, 30% to retirement accounts, 20% to a house down payment fund, and 10% to what Marcus diplomatically called a life quality improvement fund. Essentially, permission to spend some of this reclaimed money on things that would bring me joy. Healing isn't just financial, Nathan. It's also about rebuilding your sense of self-worth after this betrayal. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in days. The practical steps I'd taken were empowering a tangible way to begin moving forward. That evening, Rachel came over with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. As we ate, I described the afternoon's activities. I'm proud of you, she said. It couldn't have been easy to cancel all those arrangements you've had in place for years. It wasn't, I admitted. Part of me felt like I was betraying Mom and Dad, which is irrational, I know. It's not irrational. You're grieving not just their deaths, but the relationship you thought you had. That's complex stuff. Her understanding was one of the countless reasons I loved her. I still have the attorney appointment tomorrow. To discuss contesting the will. Rachel nodded. Whatever you decide, I support you. Just remember that healing doesn't necessarily require winning a legal battle. Sometimes it's about choosing where to invest your energy going forward. Marcus said something similar, I noted, about financial healing being only part of the process. We spent the rest of the evening looking at houses online, not seriously shopping yet, but allowing ourselves to dream about our future together. It was therapeutic to focus on possibilities rather than betrayals. What about this one? Rachel asked, showing me a modest colonial with a fenced yard. Good school district for future little Nathans and Rachels. The casual reference to our future children made me smile. Add it to the favorites. We can drive by this weekend. As we planned and dreamed, I realized something important. While Ryan had inherited physical assets, I had something far more valuable, a partner who supported me unconditionally, and a future full of possibilities, unencumbered by toxic family dynamics. The next morning I met with Patricia Winters, an attorney specializing in contested wills. She listened carefully to my story occasionally, asking clarifying questions or taking notes. Based on what you've told me, there could be grounds to contest this will, she said, when I finished. The sudden change, the introduction of an outside attorney, by your brother, your mother's apparent reluctance, and the dramatic shift from previous understandings, all suggest possible undue influence. What would that process look like? I asked. Lengthy, expensive, and emotionally draining, she said frankly. We'd need to file a formal contest with the probate court. There would be discovery depositions, possibly a trial. It could take 18 months to 3 years with legal fees potentially reaching $50,000 or more. And the chances of success? She considered this. Contested will cases are notoriously difficult. Perhaps 30 to 40%, based on what you've shared. The recent nature of the will works in our favor, as does the dramatic change in beneficiaries. But proving undue influence requires substantial evidence of your brother's manipulative behavior and your parents' vulnerability to that manipulation. I sat with this information trying to determine what felt right. If I decide not to contest, what's my best course of action? Protect yourself financially, which you've already begun. Consider sending a formal letter through my office to your brother, outlining the support you've provided and making it explicitly clear that all financial assistance has now terminated. This creates a paper trail and sets appropriate expectations. Her practical approach appealed to my accountant's mind. Let me think about the full legal contest. In the meantime, I'd like to proceed with the formal letter. A reasonable approach, she agreed. Take the weekend to consider. This isn't a decision to rush. As I left her office, I felt conflicted but clearer about my options. I could fight a prolonged legal battle with uncertain outcomes, or I could accept the loss and focus on building my future. The choice crystallized that evening when Rachel showed me a job listing a small accounting firm for sale in a nearby town. The owner was retiring and looking for a younger accountant to take over his established client base. It was exactly the opportunity I'd been dreaming of, and now, with my redirected finances potentially within reach. This feels like a sign, Rachel said. A door opening just as others have closed. Looking at the listing, I made my decision. I would send the formal letter to Ryan through Attorney Winters, but I would not pursue a lengthy court battle. Instead, I would channel my energy and resources into this new opportunity and my future with Rachel. The path forward was becoming clearer. A path focused on growth rather than grievance, on building rather than battling. For the first time since learning of my parents' betrayal, I felt genuine optimism about what lay ahead. A week passed with no word from Ryan. The mortgage payment date, the 5th of the month, came and went without the automatic transfer that had occurred faithfully for 12 years. The utilities would be next, their due dates scattered throughout the coming week. I had begun preliminary discussions about purchasing the accounting practice, meeting with the owner, and reviewing client files. The work provided welcome distraction from thoughts of my family situation. Rachel and I had also scheduled viewings of 3 houses within our newly expanded budget. Life was moving forward despite the lingering pain of betrayal. Then, on the 8th day, after I canceled the payments, my phone buzzed with a text message from my mother's number, now presumably in Ryan's possession. Mortgage due. Called bank, and they said payment stopped. I stared at the message, a mix of emotions washing over me. The audacity of his expectation that I would continue payments after what he'd done was almost impressive in its entitlement. After careful consideration, I typed a 2-word response. Not mine. 3 dots appeared immediately, indicating Ryan was typing a response. Then they disappeared. Reappeared, disappeared again. Finally, a message came through. What do you mean? There's some mistake with the bank. Can you call them? I didn't respond. Let him figure it out himself. 20 minutes later, my phone rang with my mother's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then again, and again. On the 4th call I picked up, but remained silent. Nathan, are you there? There's some issue with Mom and Dad's mortgage payment. The bank said the automatic transfer was canceled. It's not Mom and Dad's mortgage anymore, Ryan. It's yours, along with everything else. A pause. Look, I know you're upset about the will. Upset, I interrupted. No, Ryan, I'm not upset. I'm awake. For 12 years I've been paying that mortgage, supporting our parents while you were off living your life in California. That ends now. You can't just stop paying. His voice rose in panic. The mortgage is $1,800. Yes, it is. And now it's your responsibility, along with the utilities, property taxes, insurance, lawn service, all of it. But that's not fair. I can't afford all that. The irony of him invoking fairness was not lost on me. You inherited a fully paid house, Ryan. Sell it, take out a loan, figure it out. This is about the will, isn't it? You're punishing me because Mom and Dad left me the house. This isn't punishment, it's consequences. You manipulated our parents into changing their will during the last months of their lives. You brought in your own lawyer instead of using Mr. Blackwell. You deliberately hid your visits from me. You got exactly what you wanted, everything. Now you get to pay for it too. His tone changed, becoming wheedling. Come on, Nathan. We're brothers. We just lost our parents. We should be supporting each other, not fighting. We stopped being brothers the moment you decided to manipulate our grieving parents. We stopped being brothers when you chose to erase 12 years of my support and sacrifice. That's not fair, he repeated. I didn't make them change the will. They made their own decision. After you worked on Dad for months. After you isolated them from me. After you brought in your lawyer friend to draft documents outside their normal legal channels. Silence on the line. Then his voice hardened. You know what Dad was right about you. Always keeping score, always the martyr. Look how much I've done for you. Look how good I am. Maybe they got tired of your holier-than-thou attitude. Maybe they wanted a son who loved them for them, not as a retirement investment. His words stung precisely because they played on my deepest insecurities about my relationship with our parents. Had they seen my support as scorekeeping, had they resented my help even as they accepted it? Think whatever you want, Ryan. The payments are stopped. The mortgage, the utilities, the property taxes, the insurance, all of it. Figure it out yourself. I'll contest this. I'll sue you, he threatened. On what grounds? I asked calmly. For stopping voluntary payments I was making to our parents, payments that were legally gifts, not obligations. Go ahead and try. I ended the call before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or uncertainty. For the first time in this whole ordeal, I had taken control. I had set boundaries. I had refused to be exploited any further. Rachel called moments later. Are you okay? You sounded stressed when you texted. Ryan finally noticed the mortgage payment didn't go through. He expects me to keep paying. Of course he does, she said dryly. What did you tell him? That the free ride is over. That he got what he wanted, and now he has to deal with the responsibilities that come with it. Good for you, she said firmly. How are you feeling? I considered the question. Lighter. Like I finally stopped carrying a burden that was never really mine. The fallout was swift. Within days, Ryan had contacted every relative and family friend, spinning a tale of how I had abandoned him in his time of grief, leaving him struggling with our parents' house expenses. Some believed him. Others who had witnessed my years of support, and Ryan's absence, saw through his manipulation. Aunt Margaret called to assure me she understood my position. Your brother made his bed, Nathan. Now he has to lie in it. Uncle Frank was more colorful in his assessment. That boy's been skating by on charm his whole life. About time he faced reality. Mrs. Wilson stopped by with cookies and quiet support. Martha would understand, dear. She knew your worth even if circumstances at the end were complicated. Not everyone was sympathetic. My father's brother called to berate me for abandoning the family home and dishonoring my parents' memory. Several family friends expressed disappointment that Ryan and I couldn't work things out like brothers should. I listened to these criticisms without defending myself. People would believe what they chose to believe. I knew the truth of the situation, both the years of support I had provided and the deliberate manipulation Ryan had orchestrated. 2 weeks after our phone confrontation, I received a certified letter from an attorney representing Ryan, demanding I resume mortgage payments based on an implied contract and established pattern of support. I forwarded it to Attorney Winters, who responded with a comprehensive letter outlining my voluntary support over the years, the lack of any legal obligation to continue payments, and a detailed accounting of the total financial contribution I had already made to a property I had no ownership interest in. Your client has inherited a valuable asset, her letter concluded. He now bears the responsibility of maintaining that asset. Mr. Nathan Davidson's voluntary support has concluded permanently. Ryan's attorney did not respond. Meanwhile, I moved forward with purchasing the accounting practice. The owner agreed to finance part of the purchase price, making it feasible with my newly reorganized finances. Rachel and I made an offer on a modest 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood. Not as large as our parents' home, but perfect for starting our life together. A month after stopping payments, I drove past our parents' house out of curiosity. The lawn was overgrown. The flowers Mom had lovingly tended, now wilting from neglect. A for sale sign had appeared in the front yard. Ryan had apparently decided to cash out rather than maintain the property he had schemed to inherit. The sight brought a complex mix of emotions, sadness for the home, that had meant so much to our parents' anger at Ryan's casual disposal of what he had manipulated them to give him, but also a sense of closure. The house would go to a new family. Life would continue. And I would build my own home. My own future. Unburdened by the weight of unappreciated sacrifice. That evening, as Rachel and I celebrated the acceptance of our offer on the house, my phone buzzed with another text from my mother's number. Property taxes due next week. I can't cover everything. This isn't fair to me. I showed Rachel the message. She raised an eyebrow. The entitlement is breathtaking. Should I respond, I asked. She considered this. What would bring you the most peace? I thought about it, then typed a final message to my brother. The inheritance you manipulated our parents for comes with responsibilities. I spent 12 years meeting those responsibilities while you were absent. Now it's your turn. This is the last time I'll respond to messages about money. Goodbye, Ryan. I blocked the number, closing that channel of communication permanently. It was time to focus entirely on the future rather than the painful past. As summer turned to fall, word reached me through family channels that Ryan had sold our parents' house for significantly less than market value in a rushed transaction. He had apparently returned to California, leaving behind unpaid utility bills and property tax liens. The family home that had meant so much to our parents had been sacrificed for quick cash. The news should have angered me, but instead I felt a strange sense of peace. Ryan's actions continued to reveal his character, confirming I had made the right decision in cutting ties completely. Some relationships cannot be repaired, and some aren't worth the effort to try. 1 year after my parents' accident, life had transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark days following the will reading. The accounting practice I purchased was thriving with a 15% increase in clients. Rachel and I had married in a small ceremony in our new backyard, surrounded by friends and supportive family members. The house that had once been just a dream was now filled with our combined possessions, our shared goals, and plans for children in the near future. I had used some of my reclaimed finances to create a scholarship at Dad's high school for students interested in history and made a donation to the hospital where Mom had worked for a nursing education program. These gestures honored their memory in ways that felt meaningful to me, connecting their legacy to their genuine passions rather than to the manipulated decisions of their final months. The family home had new owners, a young couple with twin toddlers who had repainted the exterior and replanted the garden beds. I drove by occasionally, not out of regret or longing, but to witness the continuing life of a place that had once been important to me. The house looked happy again, filled with a family's energy and care. Ryan had made no further attempts to contact me after I blocked my mother's old number. Through the family grapevine, I heard he had used the proceeds from the house sale to invest in a new real estate venture in San Diego, which had subsequently failed. He had apparently told relatives that I had abandoned the family and stolen his inheritance by withdrawing financial support, a narrative that found less and less sympathy as time passed and his pattern of behavior became clearer to man. Everyone. In late October, on the anniversary of my parents' accident, Rachel suggested we visit their graves. I had avoided the cemetery since the funeral, the pain of their loss, complicated by the betrayal I had discovered afterward. But a year had passed. I had built a new life. Perhaps it was time to make peace with the past. The cemetery was quiet that afternoon, autumn leaves drifting across the grounds. My parents' headstone was simple, their names, dates, and the phrase, "Together in life and beyond." I had chosen those words before understanding the full circumstances of their final decisions. As I stood before their grave, Rachel's hand warm in mine, I found myself talking to them silently in my heart. "Mom, Dad, I still don't understand your final choice. I may never understand it. But I choose to remember the people you were throughout my childhood, and most of my adult life. The parents who taught me responsibility, who showed me love in countless ways, who gave me the foundation to become the man I am today. Whatever happened in those final months doesn't erase the decades before. It wasn't forgiveness. Exactly, the hurt was still too real for that. But it was an acknowledgement that people are complex, relationships are complicated, and judging an entire lifetime by its final chapter is unnecessarily limiting. "You okay?" Rachel asked softly. "Yeah," I said, surprised to find it was true. "I think I am." On our way home, we stopped for coffee at a cafe near our new house. As we sat discussing plans for the coming holiday season, our first as a married couple, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. It was Mrs. Wilson, Nathan dear. "I hope I'm not interrupting, but I found something you should have." She explained that she had been helping the new owners of my parents' house clear some items left in the attic boxes that Ryan had abandoned in his haste to sell the property. Among them was a small fireproof document box that had belonged to my mother. "There are letters inside, Nathan. Letters your mother wrote to you but never sent, and a separate letter addressed to you in the event of our deaths. I think she may have intended for Mr. Blackwell to give it to you, but it was hidden away in this box." My heart raced. "Could I come pick it up?" "Of course, dear. I'm home all afternoon." Rachel drove while my mind spun with possibilities. What had my mother written? Why hadn't these letters been included with the will? Had Ryan known about them? Mrs. Wilson welcomed us warmly, ushering us into her living room, where the familiar metal box sat on her coffee table. "I haven't read anything besides the envelopes," she assured me. "But I knew they belonged with you, not left for strangers to find." I thanked her, holding the box that had once sat on my mother's desk, a box I had assumed contained only birth certificates and social security cards. Inside were several envelopes, each labeled with my name and a date. The most recent was dated just 1 week before the accident. With trembling hands, I opened the letter marked for Nathan in the event of our deaths. Rachel sat beside me, her presence grounding me as I unfolded the pages covered in my mother's distinctive handwriting. "My dearest Nathan, if you're reading this, something has happened to your father and me. I pray this letter finds its way to you, as I have no way of ensuring it will. I'm writing in secret, something I never thought I'd need to do in my own home. Nathan, things have changed here in ways that frighten me. Ryan returned suddenly this summer, showering us with attention and gifts after years of minimal contact. Your father was overjoyed, believing Ryan had finally matured and wanted to rebuild his relationship with us. I wanted to believe it too, but something felt wrong. In July, Ryan brought a lawyer friend to dinner. Afterward, they spoke privately with your father. I wasn't included in this conversation, but your father emerged from it, determined to change our will to leave everything to Ryan. He said Ryan needed a fresh start after his divorce and financial troubles in California. When I objected, pointing out your years of support and presence in our lives, your father became uncharacteristically angry. He accused me of playing favorites and said we owed Ryan this chance to rebuild his life. I suspect Ryan told your father things about you that weren't true. There were comments about you keeping score of your financial help, about you expecting to profit from our deaths. These don't sound like your father's thoughts, they sound like Ryan's words coming from your father's mouth. I tried to stand firm, but your father's mind was made. For the first time in our marriage, he threatened to proceed without my agreement. I was shocked and afraid, not physically, but emotionally. This wasn't the man I had known for 40 years. I signed the new will because I couldn't bear the conflict, hoping I could gradually change your father's mind. But the accident happened before I could make any progress. Nathan, please know that I never stopped appreciating everything you've done for us. Your constant presence, your financial support, your loving care, these meant the world to me. I've written you letters I never sent also in this box trying to express my gratitude, but words always seemed insufficient. I've left instructions with Mr. Blackwell to give you the family photo albums and your father's watch, poor compensation for all you've given us, but the only items I could specifically designate under the new will. I've also hidden away some cash in the old cookie jar in the kitchen, about $8,000 I've saved from my pension. It's rightfully yours. My greatest regret is not standing stronger against this injustice. I failed you by choosing peace over principle, and I can only hope that someday you'll understand and perhaps forgive my weakness. Know that you were always loved, always valued, always my rock. Whatever material possessions go to Ryan, the true inheritance, our values, our love, our respect, belongs to you. With all my love and deepest apologies, Mom. I read the letter twice, tears streaming down my face. Rachel read over my shoulder, her arm tight around me. The other envelopes contained letters my mother had written over the years, expressing gratitude for specific things I had done, driving her to medical appointments, fixing the roof, setting up automatic payments letters she had never given me, perhaps feeling her thanks was inadequate compared to my contributions. She knew, I whispered. She knew it was wrong, but she couldn't stand against Dad. She tried to make it right in the only way she could, Rachel said gently. She wanted you to know the truth. The letter brought clarity, if not complete healing. My mother at least had recognized and valued my support. She had been caught in an impossible situation, torn between her husband's unexpected stubbornness and her own sense of fairness. She had failed to stand firm, yes, but she had tried to leave me the truth, even if it arrived belatedly. The $8,000 was gone, of course. Ryan had presumably found and taken it during his hasty clearing of the house. But the money wasn't what mattered. The acknowledgement, the explanation, the context for what had happened, these were far more valuable. I decided not to contact Ryan about the letters. They wouldn't change anything between us, and sharing their contents would only give him new material to manipulate in his narrative to the family. Instead, I kept them private, a confirmation that my understanding of the situation hadn't been entirely wrong. In the months that followed, I found myself reflecting on the lessons of this painful chapter in my life. The experience had taught me several truths that I now tried to live by. First, helping others is valuable for its own sake, not for expected returns. I didn't regret supporting my parents despite how things had ended. The care I provided came from love, and that remained meaningful regardless of their final decisions. Second, boundaries are essential to healthy relationships. My willingness to sacrifice without limit had perhaps contributed to being taken for granted. In my new life, I worked to give generously, but also to establish clear expectations and limits. Third, actions reveal character more reliably than words. Ryan's manipulation of our parents showed his true nature, just as my continued support of them over the years showed mine. In building new relationships, I paid attention to patterns of behavior rather than promises or explanations. Finally, moving forward is sometimes more healing than looking back. While I could have pursued legal action against Ryan, chosen to fight for what I believed was rightfully mine, that path would have kept me tethered to pain and conflict. By choosing instead to build a new life with Rachel, to create my own success. I had found greater peace and fulfillment than any legal victory could have provided. 2 years after my parents' passing, Rachel gave birth to our daughter Martha Grace, named for my mother and Rachel's grandmother. Holding her small, perfect form in my arms, I made a silent promise she would grow up in a home where her worth wasn't measured by material contributions, where love wasn't conditional, where fairness and honesty were fundamental. Values. I would teach her that true inheritance isn't about houses or bank accounts. It's about the values we live by and the love we share. I would show her through my actions that standing up for yourself doesn't mean holding on to grievances, but rather creating boundaries that allow you to live with integrity and peace. And most importantly, I would help her understand that family is defined not by obligation or blood, but by consistent care, respect, and presence in each other's lives. If you've stuck with my story this far, I wonder what lessons you might take from it. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family exploitation? Have you struggled with setting boundaries with loved ones? Or perhaps you've had to decide between pursuing justice and moving forward. Share your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes the greatest comfort is knowing we're not alone in these difficult family situations. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about navigating complex family dynamics, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Thank you for listening, and remember, true family supports your growth, rather than exploiting your generosity.